Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I'm Lennon. How you guys doing? And welcome back to the Total War Pharaoh channel. This is becoming in this past few weeks. But here we are yet again, and today we are looking at the CANAAN Faction Deep Dive. And of course we have to respond to this video to see if the game is getting better, if there are things that are new that we haven't seen yet, if the anticipation is getting higher. So without further ado, look at my messy hair and let's get into it. And holy shit, I tried this intro like 6 times, so fuck it, we're going with it. Hopefully sound is good. Why is it still alpha build?
Canaan,
give us
a
a beta
land
build.
ravaged by wars, waged by bigger empires that border it to the north and south. While Hatti and Egypt may pay little attention to the land that they see primarily as a land bridge inhabited by wild dogs.
Okay, so the Canaanites are in like the small part between Egypt and the Hittites. Okay.
These tumultuous times, leaders will rise to prove to these nations that they have been so wrong to underestimate them.
Yes.
From the humble diplomat to the great raider, Canaan will rise from the embers of both Hatti and Egypt in this great collapse, through either subterfuge or simply adding to the flames themselves. Before we begin, a quick note. Total War Pharaoh is still in development.
Of course.
And certain things may change between now and release. Also, some colors may appear a little different on the UI. This is because I'm using colorblind settings. So, with that out of the way, let's look at Canaan.
Let's look at
The leaders
Canaan.
you'll take command of from Canaan in Total War Pharaoh couldn't be more different from one another. They do, however, share one common thread. They'll both stab you. Let's start off with Irsu, as he wouldn't have it any other way. Starting out in Ret Jenu, he has a very simple, yet very respectable approach to ruling. He doesn't care to.
And why is my... Oh. The video isn't in HD. So that it's not my fault. It's not my fault.
He simply sees what he wants, and he will kill to get it. Resources, money,
takes
or the
everything.
simple premise of violence. If you have something he wants, he will not ask. He will simply take. In dark, apocalyptic times such as these, he doesn't care for society's downfall. He simply cares for the next opportunity to raise and loot. To himself, he's a prize fighter, bringing the heavyweight champions.
I said it in the last trailer, and I was about to say it again, like, how the fuck is this man such a giant? But actually he's just on a stone. Like,
he's a prize fighter, bringing the heavyweight champions to their knees.
He looks
the rest
gigantic.
Of his lens, he's a herald of the oncoming apocalypse.
The herald of the apocalypse. Basically, chaos.
Over in Fenku, we have the opposite in approach to Irsu with the diplomat, Bey, enamored by Egyptian high society, and already in decent standing with Meneptah. He intends to find his way into the
Okay, so he's basically Egypt knockoff.
Courts, and spread his control and influence throughout it, offering gifts with one hand, whilst taking with many more. Bey's approach to power is much stealthier than Irsu's, in that he would rather manipulate in the shadows than spill blood in the light. Where Irsu seeks chaos, Bey seeks to stem anarchy's tide through charming politesse and political scheming. He'll rise to power either with a puppet pharaoh or even breaking beyond Egyptian norms and taking the crown himself.
Okay, so it's not like the complete opposite. It's not really the good guy if he's scheming and backstabbing and like a little more like Skavenish.
Throughout all this though, his visage remains the same. A humble diplomat from Canaan, a learned man who just wants to do good. Just don't delve deeper, lest you want a dagger in your back.
Like I said, sneaky beaky,
whether they're seeking the pharaohs or the great king's crown, the leaders of Canaan can choose their path, or simply elect to take their own. It's not only the motives that make Irsu and Bey drastically different from one another, but also how they play as leaders, and how you'll build their empires from the ground up.
Interesting.
Bey isn't the kind of man to stand boisterously and act strong and powerful. Instead, he's much more cerebral. His approach to power is different from most of the other factions in Total War Pharaoh. While
I'm interested to see how then.
Like other leaders, he does intend to build himself up in power. He doesn't take the usual bronze weapon adorned roads. He's weak when faced head on, so would rather work in the shadows. Utilizing influence, diplomatic relations, and subterfuge, Bay utilizes the vast amount of resources he can gain from his buildings to make friends with diplomatic gifts, before he eventually stops giving and starts taking massively. His closeness to Egypt puts him in a unique position.
Okay, so he is just less about raising settlements, gaining territory, but more gaining influence and intrigue in building up your own faction and then just extorting the rest
As
of
a
them.
Canaanite, he actually begins worshipping the Egyptian deity Thoth, as opposed to any of the Canaanite gods. He also gains more legitimacy to the throne whenever he's holding a position within the courts, as well as legitimacy when plotting. He can even take it from Egyptian factions he targets, making him a formidable political opponent. His unique buildings
really
are all about bolstering legitimacy, influence, and resource production. The lightest.
Oh, this is a really different approach, like no warmongering, just basically the political facade and controlling, scheming and backstabbing. It's a very different kind of campaign indeed.
The side of Bay's facade can be seen in the singing competition and the chief scribe's headquarters, which
all with
increase
legitimacy. Sorry if I yawn from now time to time.
Influence, legitimacy to the throne, and diplomatic relations across the lands. Meanwhile, Bay's more pragmatic side can be found in the regional fair, which increases production rates. Finally, there's the Smuggler's Bay, which brings in a vast amount of wood and food. This amount increases the further society collapses, with resource amounts increasing from prosperity to crisis and finally to collapse. In Egypt and Hatti's darkest days, he'll proffer himself as the beacon that'll ensure these lands survive, but he'll make sure they know precisely how
but
they
you
did.
do have to have a bolster army.
Sees power very differently. He already has it, and he's going to make everyone else feel
this is more my style.
Where Bay seeks to create networks and pull the strings, Ieyasu is much more interested in tearing the whole thing down, taking what he wants, and leaving base camps and capitals whilst leaving everywhere else as rubble. Things like economy, happiness, and diplomacy mean very little.
Yeah, this is basically the chaos.
Wage war and take what he wants, delivering a cruel lesson to those who'd stand against him. While he's not exactly ecstatic about the idea of settling down in places, a good raider knows you need at least some bases of operation.
Okay, so he can just raise around, but yeah, you do have to get some territory here and there, so that's decent. That's
sometimes you have to extort everything out of those you impose your rule over to keep your war camp moving. Iyasu's unique buildings exemplify this.
Okay, so let's see what he has.
Usually
workforce, food income plus 75, production resources.
Improve production rates and workforce growth at the heavy cost of happiness. He's not exactly in the business of making smiles, though.
What if I care?
So he's willing to utilize an iron fist to quell rebellions if he needs.
Oh, these units look nice, like heavy armor, large shields, pointy sticks.
Iyasu's gold tally quarters bolster influence, happiness, production, and even legitimacy, if he ever felt the need to seek the crown. Lastly, a building close to Iyasu's heart is Iyasu's war camp. Increasing recruitment slots and ranks in a region, this building also increases loot taken from conflict.
Okay, that is a intense building, like 2 recruitment slots in the province. Say you have 4 settlements in the province, build 4 of these, you can build 8 units at once, all with plus 2, maybe down plus 8 experience as well. That stack? That would be insane. In 2 turns you can build a 20 stack, nearly a 20 stack with like fucking gold chevron units.
And raiding.
I don't think that would work.
Offers himself as the hand that'll save these lands, Iyasu is the boot, crushing those lands down and taking what he wants. What's yours is his. Though Canaan might not be as big as Egypt, it is still home to mighty warriors. We previously covered on how recruiting units and Total War Pharaoh worked in
the Egyptian deep dive, so certain regions have certain specific unit types that you can recruit. Okay, so
Egyptian
let's see
deep
what
dive, stating
Canaan
that
has
there
to
are forces that are unique to your leader and some that are unique to the land. Canaanite forces are stuck between two different types of militaristic beast, and therefore need to be able to adapt to both the speed of the
These
Egyptians
axes look
and the
nice.
heavy armor of the Hittites. Canaan's forces utilize medium armor, sacrificing a modicum of the speed the Egyptians utilize, whilst also keeping
So
a balance of
slower.
speed and protection against Hatti's heavily armored juggernauts. Canaanite units also commonly come with the raider attribute, meaning whilst they're fighting in the streets, they may start setting fire to buildings at your command. In Bay's starting
It's
location,
like just fucking we're fighting and then just one guy in the back. Gonna set the building on fire. Okay, fuck you guys.
in Fenku, we find the native Fenku and Yamad forces. These forces span the entirety of the armor spectrum,
Yeah, okay.
preparing them for war from
Light,
both
heavy,
the north and the
medium.
south. They have lightly armored units capable of decent ambush tactics, whilst medium and heavy armored units bring decent defense,
Okay.
capable at holding out against chariot charges from Egyptian forces. Meanwhile, Irsu starts near local forces viewers of the Egyptian deep dive may recognize,
Okay, let's
as these
see.
are the Sinai and Retjeni
Oh, yeah.
militia
Yeah.
also utilized by Ramesses. While the forces may be familiar, under Irsu's command, you'll be utilizing them for different reasons.
Okay,
Where
that's
Ramesses
interesting.
sees these forces as yet another decent force in his local militias, for Irsu, their speed and range can be absolutely pivotal. The Sinai and Retjenu local forces pick up the
Doesn't
slack where
slack.
Irsu's
Okay, so
unique
they
forces
are
may
lighter
falter.
armored and probably
With
faster.
decent ranged units, discipline,
Disciplined.
and fantastic speed.
Like I
But this
said.
doesn't mean Irsu's a slouch, as we'll cover in the next section.
Okay.
Finally, Canaanites are the only factions capable of gaining access to either the Pharaoh's Guard, we mentioned in the Egyptian deep dive, and the Great King's forces, which we'll leave for our deep dive into the Hittites. We don't want to take
So
up
as Canaan, you can get the best of both worlds because you're stuck in the middle. So it's probably a harder start because you have two enemies and the sea peoples, but you do get the best of the best from Egypt and from the Hittites. That is interesting. So challenge, risk, and reward kind of thing. Nice.
eyes off of Irsu, or Bay for that matter. Taking your eyes off of Bay, in fact, could well be the last mistake you'll ever make. His forces are as treacherous on the battlefield as he
Yeah,
is
okay,
in
so
the
he's
courts.
a lot of
Specializing
sneaky.
in ambush tactics, nearly all
Ambush
of Bay's
tactics.
unique forces have the ambush
Skaven.
trait,
I said it
meaning they're
before.
difficult to spot in even the most open of terrain. They're also
wow.
capable at disabling a majority of an army's defensive and offensive capabilities. They strike fast with surgical precision in underhanded ways, much like their leader in the courts.
See?
If, however, you find stealth both in the courts and on the field to be too slow an approach,
Yes.
then the unique forces of Irsu are for you. His forces, much like himself, are adorned in the heaviest armor,
Like
letting them
we
shake
saw
off
in
pathetic
literally,
stones from
nice
slings
armor.
and absolutely crush any lighter armored opposition in melee combat. He even utilizes heavy chariots that can decimate missile forces with ease. He may
Nice
harbor some lighter
chariots.
armored units, even one with bows, but their purpose is simple: be expendable and harass the enemy until the big guns come in. His forces can be reckless in combat, which can be utilized by certain units.
Reckless, what does it mean? Disabled if effect. Reckless advance. Units will advance forward, pushing back enemy units on the way. Okay.
Stances, and some of his forces even have the heedless charger trait. But with their heavy armor, in many cases they can afford to be this bloodthirsty. To them, this isn't
heavy
a
armor.
structured war with
Nice.
honor. This is a bloody battle, and they're here for a fight.
Fight.
So these are the Canaanite leaders you'll be taking command of in Total War Pharaoh. From the brutish might of Irsu to the cunning stratagems of Bay, will you be the hand that pulls the strings of these civilizations
Nice.
from the age of collapse to the age of Canaan? Or will you be the herald of the apocalypse, reveling in the destruction wrought by your hand and a dark cloud on the horizon? Whether it's a dynasty to be proud
Probably
of or
both
an
at some
empire of
point.
ash, will you bring Canaan to glory?
I really like this. Okay, let's talk about it. Jesus, my hair is like absolute shit show. We didn't see anything new spectacularly, but we did see some good. It gave us a good idea, and you know, since we're still playing a lot of Warhammer at the time, yeah, you just have basically Chaos and Skaven coming in Total War Pharaoh, but then in like the historical versions of them. So yeah, we have the sneaky stealth guy that is a backstabber, and we have just the mad lad who just burns everything to the ground. Units look amazing. The armor looks cool. I like the idea that you can have the best of both worlds. Like you can get Egyptian light armor units, and then you can get heavy armor units from the Hittites, and you're basically in somewhere everywhere in between that. So I really like that. So I am excited to see what is next. I hope you guys enjoyed this as well as much as I did. I'm getting really intrigued. Like I'm looking forward to this game and hope it's not a disappointment. But I have good hopes. I have good hopes for this. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like on the video. Comment down below what your opinions are or what things you would think I missed. Be sure to point that out as well. And by all means, do subscribe to the channel, because when this game drops, we are definitely going to play it. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.